Hey everyone, welcome to the Unhandled Exception podcast. I'm Dan Clark and this is episode number 58. And today I'm joined for the second time by Nick Chapsas to chat all about the new Dometrain platform. And it's good to have you back. I'm really glad I didn't put you off too much the first time when you decided to come back. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here again. Have you had anyone else for the second time, or am I the first one?
Oh, I think there's a bit of a competition between Jess White and Pete Gallagher.
Okay.
And they've both been on a couple of times. And I know they were, like, the first time they both came on was a group episode. And I think they were both saying, it's like, who's going to do the most episodes on the podcast?
Was that the one where they pulled out the guitars and started playing?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So that was the DDD episode, and right at the end, we all noticed, because there's quite a few of us on that one, it was a really good episode, and we noticed that in everyone's background, there was some instrument or another. So, nice, two guitars.
Should I bring my guitars?
Oh yeah, let's have a look. I can take a picture.
I'll bring more.
I've got a Strat over there and a Mini Martin in the other room somewhere, so...
I got this lovely 3/4 Fender over there, acoustic. And I've really been enjoying my time with it. I was more of a nylon string, like classical guitar type of guy. And yeah, that thing just blew my mind how good it is and how compact it is. So I just take it everywhere.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's nice and small and just nice strings as well. It's lovely.
Go on, play the tune.
No way, I'm not going to play anything. I'm more of a melodic type of player. So I would play something like... Anyway, I'm not going to bore you with this, but that's something I wrote. I write a lot of like melody stuff. I don't know if it comes through the mic.
Well, I've no idea, because it was being cut out, but because the Craig bot that does records our audio locally in high quality, yeah. So it might come out in the final one, but it was cutting out quite a lot for me. I think Discord was just,
Discord is very aggressive with high tones like this, because it thinks it's noise, which, to be honest, the way I'm playing it probably is.
Well, the bits that came through sounded very nice, so we'll see what happens in the recording.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, just kind of...
Nice. So this episode is actually to talk about Dometrain, but before we do, I'm just going to do this episode's listener mention. And this one goes out to Carl Sagana, and he put a post on LinkedIn saying, Dan's podcast has been getting better and better since the early days from what feels like years ago. The quality of his show and the amazing guests he has had on are, in my honest opinion, compulsory listening for anyone in the industry. Keep up the good work, Dan. So, wow, thank you, Carl, for those kind words. I honestly owe it to all the awesome guests. Yeah, they give up their free time and geek out with me on the show. So just, it's not me, it's the guests. They do most of the talking.
You're being too humble. I think you should, when someone makes it to the mentions, you just give them a free copy of your course.
Well, that goes through you, so that's up to you.
I mean, I'm giving you the green light.
Well, so from that, it sounds like, Carl, you're getting a free copy of the course then.
Congrats.
Nice. So if anyone else wants to get mentioned on the show, especially after what Nick's just said, then just send a social media post mentioning me on any of the socials. I'm on most of them, and all feedback is greatly appreciated. And also a quick reminder that this podcast has its own Discord community. If you head over to the website unhandledexceptionpodcast.com, you'll see a big shiny Slack link there. And very lastly, a quick reminder that this podcast is sponsored by Everstack, which is my own company, providing software development and consultation services. For more information, visit everstack.com. So, right, okay, now that's over and done with, we can talk about Dometrain. So I guess the first natural question is, what is Dometrain?
Dometrain is an evolution of my own courses platform, basically. So back in the day, when I was still working full-time as a software engineer, I really didn't want to go down the usual path of you're making free content on YouTube, and then that doesn't really make much money. And then you have the Patreon to give the source code, but then that doesn't really make much money compared to a salary in London. It's like, how can I monetize this to the point where I can do this full time? And I was always very skeptical about selling to my audience because I get really bad imposter syndrome. And if you give me your hard-earned money, I have to do a really, really good job. So for the longest time, I did not want to do this. But the career side was going a certain way. Actually, the company side was going a certain way. By company, I've been my last employer. And I thought you know what, I might as well just do a course, do my best job, give it a go and see how it goes. So I create nickchapsas.com and I use a platform called Teachable to just host the courses and sell them. And that went really well. And that showed me that, okay, I'm very careful with everything I'm doing in terms of financials because I want to make sure that it makes sense to go down that path. So I'm like, I'm not going to stop working full time now, even though this can pay, because I want to guarantee that it can. And this wasn't just a fluke that I make a course, everyone buys one course and nobody buys the second one. So I make a second one, my unit testing and my integration testing courses. And that continues to go really well. In fact, it goes better than the first one. And at the time, the company was in a certain way. So I quit and I decided to do this full time. And the course is what is paying basically for the free content everyone's getting on YouTube and every other platform. Now, fast forward 6-7 courses later, I didn't want to just keep pumping out courses because that doesn't really scale with my time. I can keep bringing one course out, but then these courses will need updates as well eventually and so on. And I'm in a position where I know many people because I do conference speaking, I do workshops, I go on podcasts like this one, and I get to meet some very good educators, some very good people who are good on camera. They can explain things. And I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just bring more people on board and effectively build a mix between Udemy's pricing model, but Pluralsight's quality? And I would argue the quality is actually even better because the teaching style is very different than what you would get on something like a Pluralsight. So what Dometrain is now becoming, which is the new brand for nickchapsas.com, is sort of a marketplace of courses, but is more of a quality over quantity type of situation where I don't want to pump 30,000 courses out and then give you a subscription to make your $30 a month feel like they're worth a lot. But rather, if you really want to learn that one topic, you can just go buy that course and master that topic or buy that bundle. And that's the whole idea behind it. And then there's a lot of philosophy behind it as well, which we can go deep into, how I think educators should be teaching a course and tone of voice and camera presence and so on. But the main idea is it's a platform I own to sell courses, but also other third-party authors now are joining in to sell their own courses through the platform.
Well, I guess where you mentioned about camera presence then, and you also mentioned Pluralsight, for me, that's one of a big difference is that all the authors have the webcams on, so it feels a lot more personable. Now, as an author, when I was doing it, that was like quite a big, I don't know how to say it, but it felt like, oh, this is going to be a lot harder to edit because obviously jump cuts and all that kind of thing. But actually, at the start, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be so much harder because I've got my webcam on. But when I started doing it, I totally got it. And I'm so glad that you've done it that way now. Because also, if I picture myself as someone that was watching a course, just actually being able to see the author and you feel just more, it just feels more personal, I think.
Yeah, like even if you go on Dometrain's website, one of the main things I wanted to sell from the beginning, even before it was Dometrain, even when it was Nick Chapsas. And I think a big reason why many people watch my videos in the first place is because the camera is there. And it's not like, someone attractive or whatever. It is, you sit down, you go to a company, you go to work. And the way I learn, at least, is by sitting down with a senior engineer explaining me things. So it's this pair programming experience that I'm trying to give to people. And I think it's a really, really effective way of teaching because it's one thing to just read a book and try to understand something the way it's written down in a very sterile way. And it's a different way to just sit down with a person, look at them, look at their mannerisms, look at the way they use their hands, and you get it more. And that, I think, comes from my mom, who was also a teacher. She was doing private tutoring, and she was a very physical teacher. She would shake students to explain chemical bonds or whatever. and they got it. That was the thing I was saying. Then the difference between, because I was doing other lessons as well. And some of them where you just go in and feel like they're just reading a book. I'm not learning anything. But when you're more physical, your presence is there, you really, really get it. And not everyone will be like this, of course. Not everyone is learning the same way. But I have found that I want to teach that way, and it's a very effective way of teaching. So when someone's completing a Dometrain course, they come back and they say, this is so different from what I'm used to. You have your own tone of voice, and every author has their own tone of voice, and I get it. And I want to see more courses from Dan, more courses from James, more courses from Amikai, more courses from Nick. It's not more courses from that platform, it's also more courses from that author. So building that trust between the author and the student is very important to me.
Yeah, definitely. Coincidentally enough, someone reached out to me yesterday on Twitter, a DM, saying that I'd just finished your Docker course. Are you planning on doing another one? And so I mentioned about, as you know, potentially doing a Kubernetes one. And
Yep.
he was saying, well, I'll be buying that when that comes out. So it's
Yeah.
even before I've done it, there's a sale there. So that's really nice.
Yeah, this happens all the time, and sometimes people reach out and they say, I want this author to make a course on this thing, because they know the expertise of the author as well, and they also like the author. And it's not always going to happen because of how scheduling works, and someone might be a bigger authority on a topic than the other person. But I want to build a pool of authors who are experts in a specific field, and then they give everything on that field to the students. That is the idea.
Do you feel that there's a bit of a, for yourself finding authors, a barrier to entry because someone might be an expert in the field, so good, but they might not be comfortable on camera? So do you find that you've got to find someone that can be good on camera, know what they're talking about, can edit, can do editing? Because that's, for me, that was a big learning curve as well. And has the equipment, has like a decent camera. There feels like a lot of facets that an author on Dometrain has to have.
Like with everything, it's an investment, right? And I'm going to talk about the equipment and the time in a second, because I think time is the biggest expense here. But to go back to your original point, it's very hard to find authors that can make courses on Dometrain. In fact, if you didn't have your YouTube channel, I wouldn't have reached out to you, because you can be the best Docker knowledgeable person in the universe. But that means nothing if you can't explain something, you can't teach something. And I've seen your teaching, and I get it. Like, this person can talk, this person can teach. So let's reach out. Let's do a bit of an audition thing. Let's see, can they get their content to be better as well? Because sometimes someone will be making videos, but then the quality won't be there, the sound won't be there, the video won't be there, and the video has to be good. So if you take a look at people like James Easton, for example, who works for AWS, he made a course on solution architecture for Dometrain. If you go and take a look at his content before he started making Dometrain courses and after, the quality is off the chart. And he acknowledges that, and the audience acknowledges that, and the views reflect that. Because you don't need high quality to make good content, high quality equipment, but it does make a difference because of the perceived authority of the flashing lights or whatever behind my back right now don't really mean anything about me as a software engineer. But the experience is audio-visual, so you want to be looking at something pleasant. And that just helps.
Yeah, well, as you know, when we started, I invested in like decent camera equipment. And if I look back at the YouTube videos from before and after, as you say, it's night and day. It's kind of, I hadn't realized how poor the quality was just using my Logitech Brio webcam initially. And then, like, you obviously helped a lot. We had quite a few Discord conversations about just like what cameras to get and that kind of thing. And it's interesting, even like things like, as you know, we hit a few, which I was surprised about, audio issues, because the amount of money I've spent on this audio equipment for the podcast, and we actually learned that there's actually frequencies I can't hear. And so you were saying, well, there is a bit of a whining noise in the background. What's that background noise? I'm like, I can't hear anything. So I started like asking everyone, and some people say they can hear it. Some people say they can't hear it. Some people say it's really loud and annoying. So it's really interesting how people can hear different things or not hear different things. But yeah, so that led, and I've still not worked out what that is. I think it must be something that a neighbour's got, because I've tried unplugging lots of things in the house and turning things off, and it still does it. I can see it I use Adobe Audition for editing, and I can see it in the spectral frequency display, like 4K, there's just a line. And I think it's something a neighbour's got, because, yeah, I don't know what it is. But there's other things, like I found, speaking with Rode, who I've got a Rodecaster mixer, just in conversations with them, we were talking about the gain that I've got on that I set to, and apparently it was set way too high. It turned out that I was a natural distance away from the mic, rather like with this kind of mic, you've got to be right on it. So I had the gain too high because I wasn't close enough to the mic. So that would have, like, even though that's not the cause of that audio issue, because the gain was higher, it kind of amplified it. So there's all little things like that where I really thought, obviously I knew that I had to improve my video. I wasn't expecting to have to improve the audio as well, given the podcast. So just lots of learnings like that.
Yeah, but you go back and forth, and audio is the trickiest thing as well, because when someone wants to create content, the first thing I say is get a good mic. Nail that down, because if you have bad audio, you're going to lose someone immediately. If you have no camera, many people make content without camera. and they're very successful. You don't need it. But if you want to use it, I think it helps. But audio, invest. And going back to your point about equipment, like it is an investment because the idea is, okay, yes, you're going to pay, I don't know, how much do you think you've spent to create the course? If you want to talk about money. Yeah, hardware-wise.
Hardware-wise, well, so I already had all the gear. I did actually change mic because of this audio issue, but I already had the mic, so let's ignore that one. The camera, so I think we were talking, and I ended up getting the Sony A6400. I think that at the time it was about 800 quid. Looking now, it seems to have gone up. Literally after I bought it, it went up, so I timed that well. I think, so from a hardware point of view, that was the main one, the camera. Oh, I got another lens as well. Not the lens you can see me on now because there's no background blur, but I got like a closer lens which did all the background blur stuff. Yeah, it's a shame. I kind of want to get another lens actually because I want one that's kind of, that's quite zoomed in because it's the whole YouTube kind of thing. But I want one that we can use for conversations like this that isn't as zoomed in, but I still get the background blur because, as you can see, this is the one that came with it. This is the zoom lens. So yeah, so 800 quid there, another lens, say another 200 quid, I guess, 300 quid, so just over 1,000. And obviously, I took a month off work to actually do the course, so that was the big expense because that was unbilled. But yes, I probably don't want to talk financials, but it has more than broken even now. So I'm glad I did that.
Yeah,
that was the risk for me, that taking the month off work. So, but it's kind of, that's fine.
Yeah, and I had authors who actually started. So originally, I pitched some people, like I handpicked some people back, I think in April or even before that, April 2023. And some of them said, I think I'm going to have it ready by September, like this September, as we're recording. And they did not realize how much time can go into this unless you do take some time off. And some authors have taken time off to do this and hoping that it will pay off, and it has for everyone. But also those who are trying to do it part-time, like maybe in the afternoon, maybe the evening, maybe the weekend, that can take way longer. And because you're taking a longer stretch of time to do it, your knowledge change if you're really keeping up to the thing. So you go back and re-record some stuff as well. And that can be like a perpetual motion of never completing the course. In the beginning, I was very much like, okay, here's a contract. There's an open delivery date. Whenever you have it ready, let's publish it. And now I'm like, look, I want to be as open as possible with the delivery date, but I want you to also deliver it. So we're going to have to put it in writing. And this is a process that I had to learn as well, because many of those people making the courses are people I know, that my friends, and you really don't want to piss off anybody, especially on a business setting. But it's a two-way thing, you know. I trust you to come on board and take this very, very popular topic that I could do or someone else could do. Can you do it? And yeah, it's the hardest thing I found is saying no to people you know.
Yeah, as you say, our industry has got a really good community. So a lot of people in our industry are friends.
Yeah.
So it is like mixing friendship and business is kind of tricky. But yeah, I couldn't have done it without taking time off. There's no way I could have done it in the side, especially on the first one, because with all aspects, there was a big learning curve as I was doing the editing, like each module. So I used DaVinci Resolve, and each day I was learning new things, picking up new tips and tricks and along the way. So I feel that now, I think if I did it a second time, then I would be much more efficient because I know my workflow now. But then saying that, Kubernetes is a bigger topic, so it might balance out. So I think I would still have to take time off again for a second course, even though I'm more experienced in doing it.
Yeah. I think sitting down and doing it, the way I'm recording my courses is I'm planning them for like 2 weeks or 1 week, depending on how recent knowledge I have on the topic, because I always make courses on things I think I'm an expert on. So if I'm not, I'm going to just give the topic to someone else that they're better than me. And I'm going to sit down one day and record everything in one day, and then spend 1 day or 2 days editing it. And then on the third day or the fourth day, it is out. So it's like bam, bam, bam. So recording, editing, marketing material and asset creation and everything, release. And after that, I just order pizza. I go to the sofa, I put a blanket on me, I cry for like 2 hours, and I recover because it's rough. Like I've recorded how many courses? think 6 courses or 7 courses that way, and I'm gonna keep doing it that way for as many as I make. 8 courses actually, and I physically sometimes get sick, like headache. Yeah, it's bad because sometimes I can go all the way to 3 a.m., 4 a.m. editing or not sleep. I'm that type of person. I shouldn't, I know, but I get really passionate about this because I want it to be out, because I want people to have this. So yeah, it's been quite the process. And as you said, the first thing you record and you edit is always going to be the hardest. It's the same with YouTube, I'm sure. When you made your first video and you knew nothing, it must have been the hardest. The problem with courses is it's so long, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you can get sort of demotivated saying, oh, I'm still halfway through with this. I have 5 more hours of looking at my face and hearing to my voice, which is a process on its own. I don't know how you find it. Obviously, you have the podcast, so it must be way better now. But in the beginning, for many people, it's like, I can't listen to my voice.
Yeah, I think with the podcast, I've kind of got used to it. It's kind of, I don't like the sound of my own voice, but no one does. But it's kind of, you just get used to it the more you do it. But yeah, so where you do all the recording, all the editing, like in one go, I was doing like each section at a time. So I was kind of like planning. Well, I planned the whole thing, as you know, that we did it in Notion, what each module and section was, but at a very high level, just what the topic was. But then I would go through each one, like plan it in more detail, record it, edit it, export it. So I've got that's done, tick. And then I would do it that way. So I've almost got like a progress bar of progress. But I think if I did it like you did it, as you say, that would drive me insane, because there's no fragmentation. It would be like all editing. I've got hours to edit in one go. So
yeah, it's a lot.
So we're going to pause the conversation just for a moment for a quick mention about our awesome new sponsor, Track.js, who are helping support the show so I can continue to create lots of episodes. We've spoken a lot before in this podcast about back-end monitoring and telemetry, but what about the front end? Do you know what happens when your JavaScript breaks? I mean, I personally never write bugs, but sometimes browsers are weird and users do unexpected things, and we get errors in the production UI. Do you know when that happens? I've got to be honest, for a lot of my projects, I wouldn't. Well, Track.js is a fantastic tool that monitors errors from your end users, showing you a story of exactly what happened that led to that error. It gives you actionable observability to what's happening in the client side. So check it out at trackjs.com.
So after you, I guess this is more me interviewing you, but how did you find the overall process of creating your first course?
Like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
No, so initially it was kind of like, when you first asked me, it's like, can I do this? It's quite a lot of work. And as you said before, a lot of imposter syndrome going on. Is like, because obviously you've got like a huge network, you've done very well on YouTube and all this kind of thing. And then when you reached out to me saying, don't do a course on my platform, and it's like, shit. Yeah, it was just quite nerve-wracking, I guess. And also because I knew I didn't have like the camera equipment and all the stuff. So there was a lot to do. And I knew I'd have to take a month off. So I'd have to like make sure my main client was okay with that. Then once I got started, I enjoyed doing it. There was bits where it's kind of like, I was aware that I was losing a lot of money through not working that month, and I had no idea whether it would make that money back. So it's kind of like, questioning yourself, am I doing the right thing? But then, yeah, as it came closer to being complete, I was thinking, well, when you get closer to that feeling of, I've actually done it, it's done. And I think then there was the whole thing of, because you didn't really review it all the way through, you kind of like just did one big review at the end. I was like, well, okay, so Nick's going to look at this and give me a whole massive list of feedback saying you've pretty much got to redo the entire thing because it's not what you wanted. So that I was like really nervous about that. And if you remember, I think we'd both gone on a holiday and came back. So it was after we got back that I was waiting to find out whether you were okay with it. And you're pretty much, yeah, let's make it live. Boom. And then so I was like, the relief, it was just like, it was a text conversation, wasn't it? So it wasn't a video call. But if it was a video call, you'd have seen the relief just drip off my face. It's kind of, but yeah, so then as soon as it went live, as you know, lots of sales started coming in, which I've got to be honest, I know you said that it would sell quite well because of your experience with the other courses, but I don't know, like, so I subscribe to Pluralsight, and one of the things I like about it is that I can dip in and out of courses. I don't have to buy a big commitment to a course because it might not be right for me. And I can dip in and out of different sections. So I was kind of thinking, well, do people actually pay money for an individual course, or would they rather go to something like Pluralsight? And yeah, as soon as it went live, I got proved completely wrong, and it's selling very well. So after that, yeah, to answer your question, very, very happy.
Yeah, I'm glad, first and foremost, because I do remember at the beginning you were quite negative to the idea of doing it. And actually, many authors have been, because they don't know that some people don't want the Pluralsight experience. So the thing with Pluralsight is it's great, but it tends to be outdated and tends to be many shorter courses, because that's what the internal directive, or basically what Pluralsight wants to have. Because Pluralsight wants to make you think your $30 or whatever the subscription is worth 30,000 courses. So you're paying 0.0001 pence per course if you think about it, but you're not going to take all of those courses. And not all those courses are good. In fact, with the Pluralsight model, the value of the company's subscription diminishes based on how many courses they have. And the way Pluralsight is doing author payouts as well is per minute watched of their course. So if you get given a bad topic that not many people want to watch, you're not going to make any money. Someone has to watch the whole thing through. Now, what we notice with Dometrain, and by the way, I mean me, is that people paying for a course actually makes them want to take it. And there's people who have completed literally every single one of the courses 100%. And sometimes you don't get that with Pluralsight. In fact, that's why the courses are smaller in Pluralsight, because they want you to complete them, and having a smaller running time makes it easier for you to say just another hour. Now on Dometrain, we vary between 3.5 to 6 hours per course, but people do complete it because the money you spend to buy that course, you really value that, because it's, spending however much you have to spend. Now the pricing starts from like $89.99 US, but you will complete the course, which I can't say for things like Udemy courses, where you go to Udemy, everything is 99% off. The author makes no money. In fact, an author, because Udemy is doing purchasing power parity, so PPP, which means that they localize the pricing for whatever $60 would be for each country, because most of that traffic is coming from Southeast Asia, you're going to average as an author around $1 per course sale, even if you price it at $70, which is insane. And some people say, why don't you put in Udemy? Because I pay my bills and mortgage on pounds, British pounds. I couldn't afford to do this if I was selling on Udemy. And yeah, if you see big numbers on sales on Udemy, don't associate it with big money. It's not how it works. And also Udemy does have a sort of a negative connotation when it comes down to quality. It's like more of the low quality stuff tend to be there, while Pluralsight is high quality. But I don't like that Pluralsight is treating the authors the way that they're being treated. If you did join in the very early beginning, you're going to have some great rates, which, by the way, they were also decreased recently from what I understand further. But you will make money. But if you join now, the train has left and it's not going to work out for you. Which is why many Pluralsight authors, and I'm talking 10 to 15 authors, have reached out, high-profile names, to make courses. In fact, Steve Smith, our Dallas, who has one of the most popular clean architecture templates in .NET, and he's one of the biggest authors on Pluralsight by far. He's making 3 courses for Dometrain right now.
Oh, nice.
It is, yeah. And I'm being very careful with who I pick, because, again, being big on Pluralsight doesn't mean that I want you on Dometrain or you're going to be big on Dometrain. It's a very different vibe, and it's a very different teaching style as well.
That actually coincidentally leads on to the next question I was going to ask. If someone does actually want to be, someone listening to this podcast does want to be an author, can they reach out to you? Or I know you said Steve Smith reached out to you, but in general, is it more that you reach out to potential authors?
Yes, in fact, with Steve, I reached out to him because it was before the platform was rebranded. But after it was rebranded, especially in conferences, many of them grab me and they say, oh, Dometrain, how do I get on that? It's very much that I am reaching out to people. It is rare that someone will reach out to me and it's going to end up being a partnership thing, because these are people who, if I'm going to put my seal of approval on, I want it to be people that ideally I know their teaching style, and I know I can trust them to teach the students we have at the school well. We have 19,000 students in the school, and when I say this course is out, go ahead and buy it or whatever, I truly believe it. Like when I say, the promo bit for your course, for example, when you reached out and you said, "Oh, you talk so kindly about me on the 1 minute ad read," it's like, yeah, but everything I say, it's true. I wouldn't have this person under my brand if I didn't think they're worth it. So it just is very rare to have that happen. I'm not saying it's going to be impossible. And sometimes I'm not reaching out to someone because I don't think that they would want to join. But I have been wrong with this. So now I just reach out, not all the time. In fact, I haven't reached out to someone in a few months now because we have quite an influx of courses coming in from people who are on board. In fact, we have one coming out on the 9th of October, then another one on the 23rd. So every 2 weeks we have a launch, and we might shorten that to be every week now. But I don't want too many authors, basically, and too many courses. I want fewer courses and fewer authors who are within a subject, and then people can go from the getting started on Docker to the deep dive on Docker. Now, Docker is a bad example, but like Kubernetes or whatever, and still get that same experience from Dan in this case. So it's very rare, but it is possible. What I'm looking for as an author is online presence. You have to have some online presence at some level. You don't have to be huge, but you need to have some credentials. You need to either work for a company that people can trust. For example, Amikai works for Microsoft. James System works for AWS. So we have more Microsoft employees actually coming as well with courses. People like Michael Steib, who made the hot chocolate framework for GraphQL, he's making a course. He's the dude that made the library. So of course I'm going to have him. So I need proof that you can actually teach the thing you want to teach. And then that you're a good teacher, which we're going to figure out with things like auditions, and then is your equipment up to speed. And if you use a webcam and you insist on using a webcam, then that's not going to work. Like you're going to have to pay 1,000 to 2,000 to up your game. And if you don't think you're going to make that money in the first whatever, let's not have this chat, because I don't have an infinite amount of time and someone else can use this time. So it might sound harsh, but the reality is I know what this platform is and where it's going, and I want the best people on the platform. So I tend to handpick who's joining.
Yeah, I must admit, when you mentioned about the shout out on your YouTube videos, that was a bit surreal, actually, like watching your YouTube videos and then seeing my face in the background. Very surreal. So yeah, a massive thank you for that. I don't know what I mentioned earlier in the episode, but I get emails for each sale. So each one of those, you could tell when you had released a new video, because suddenly I got a whole bunch more emails, which was quite nice.
Yeah. Yeah, every time a video is out, that's a great thing about running a business and having an online presence. Every time I release a video, all of the authors get an uptick in sales, because the first thing I say is, and for more training, check out my courses on dometrain.com. Obviously, I have my courses, but if you actually go on Dometrain, you're going to see that the first authors that come up, or the first courses that come up in the order, is like Amikai, James, you, and then it's me. And that is intentional, because I really want the third-party authors to succeed, because that's where the business is going. And the way it's growing, we're going to have, I think by the end of 2024, at least 10 to 12 different authors. So I have massive plans for the platform, instead of both staff and what's coming and courses. And I really don't want to raise money, even though I had chats with VCs as well, because I don't need to. It's been growing steadily and nicely, and I like owning the vision and where it's going, and not having to have someone over my shoulders saying, you have to make that profit, or you have to make our investment worth it, and so on. So yeah, I think it's going great, and it's going to grow significantly. I wouldn't be surprised if in a year or two we are the go-to place to get courses, especially for .NET, but the plan is to expand even further.
Yeah, I guess you mentioned .NET actually, and we're kind of like, we spoke about what is Dometrain at the start, but we didn't really talk about what the target audience is. Is it specifically .NET developers? I know I did a Docker course which had a .NET component, but it's for any developer that wants to learn Docker. But is it more slightly biased towards .NET?
Well, it is slightly biased towards .NET, but that's because my audience is .NET, so it is easier to gain that first chunk of your audience based on the audience you already have. So convert some of that audience to a different type of audience. But then, like you said, .NET people can take a DDD course that happens to use .NET to explain DDD, but you don't have to learn C# to take a DDD course, because you can apply those principles to Java, for example, Kotlin or whatever, or Go. Same with yours. Yes, you're using .NET for your examples, but the main focal point is on Docker. It's not on C#. So I think that's the way I want to expand to other things. And we're going to have things like TypeScript and micro frontends and some other stuff coming. There's massive plans for the platform, but it does make sense to pump out more .NET courses to be the go-to place for .NET courses. And then in terms of the B2B side of things, selling to businesses, which we do, companies like Activision Blizzard, for example, is using us internally for the training because they have lots of C# stuff. So we do want to capitalize on, I have this .NET audience. Let's convert all of it. Every .NET developer should know about Dometrain. And then on the back of that, if you happen to also do some front end, let's add TypeScript. If you happen to also do some other stuff with Go, for example, let's go with a Go course. And who knows where it goes from there. Effectively, we're building, I don't want to say the next Pluralsight, because I don't like to think we're competing with a company that's worth like billions, has been around for a decade or more. But we're building a platform on that caliber.
Yeah, definitely. So my next question, this is kind of like a knowing question because you asked me about it about a week ago, but is there a community or networking kind of component within the platform so people that have done the course can engage with authors or yourself?
Yeah. So because the school is one of the, I don't want to say highest earning, but it is one of the highest earning schools on Teachable, the platform we're using behind the scenes. We're getting a lot of previews on what's coming. And what is coming is actually a forum type community on Teachable. So the platform will have it, Dometrain will have it, where people who have bought a course can engage with each other. So if you bought the Docker course, anyone who's bought it can access a specific section within the platform to talk about it and ask questions. And then the author can go on and answer those questions, make updates, and so on. It's not there yet. In fact, when I started with nickchapsas.com, I had a Discord server, and anyone who bought a course got access to the Discord server. But I stopped that because it was very hard to manage the way it was on Discord. And I didn't want to have to learn how all the bots work and everything and answer all the questions. So it's moving here. And when we're going to hire a community manager, which should be fairly soon, then they will be able to also help with that. Then the authors will also be able to help with questions. And the student-to-student collaboration as well is going to be great because people can just talk to each other and answer each other's question, which is amazing because you're sharing your knowledge, you're learning. It's great. So yeah, that is coming. I think by the end of the year, we're going to have it. Maybe before that. I know it's in preview right now, but we can't use it because we use a custom domain for the school. But it is coming. There's actually many features coming to the platform. Things like a basket, for example, so you can buy many courses at the same time. What we're also adding is gifting. So if you want to buy a course to someone else, you can't do this right now. Now you'll be able to do that. So all of that is coming.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that because I guess from an author's point of view, you've told me that you're having really good feedback and everything. But even though some people have reached out to me, most of the time it's kind of like I'm just like, you're probably getting the feedback because it's your platform. So I'm quite looking forward to being a bit more engaged with the people that bought the course. So I'm quite looking forward to that coming out.
Yeah, that's definitely coming. And the moment I have access to it, I will configure it and enable it.
Have you had a lot of feedback just in general about the platform from people that bought courses?
Yes. So every time a new course is out, we tend to get many, many messages in terms of, oh, I started taking this course. And all of the feedback is positive. In fact, we only had in thousands of sales, we only had less than 10 refunds, even though we offer a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. If you don't like the course, we're going to give you money back within 30 days, which I think Teachable is lowering to 14 days now, and I can't do anything about that. But less than 10, that was based on, hey, this is not for me. We had a few more because sometimes people don't put their tax ID or the VAT number on checkout and an invoice can't be generated. So I have to refund and they have to rebuy using the right details. But the feedback is fundamentally very positive. And the thing is, it goes through so many reviews and iterations from the audition of the teacher to make sure that the content, the quality of the content is good, to the final checks before it's out, that it's very unlikely we're going to miss something. And to go back to what you said before about you being scared that I will just scrap everything, like this would never happen for any author. It was very unlikely because I wouldn't have someone be an author if they don't know the subject. So I'm not really going to critique you on the subject itself, because if I was an expert and if I knew better, I would have done it. So I trust the author. So it's more, is the sound okay? Is the video okay? Do we have frame drops? Is the frame rate, is it rendered in the right frame rate, the right resolution? Like all that is what I'm going to look for. And then the rest is just putting everything in, generating captions, marketing material, which I'm doing myself. Yeah, so it wouldn't be an issue.
That's really cool. So we are kind of almost out of time, but I've realized we haven't covered the hardest problem in software development, naming things.
Yes.
How did you come up with the name Dometrain?
So, okay, I don't like naming stuff after what they are about. So I wouldn't like Teachable, for example. I think it's a fine name, but I don't like it as something I would name, because it's like, okay, you're trying to teach, enable teaching, Teachable, or something is teachable. Like, oh, it makes sense. What a smart name. Udemy, it's like University Academy or like your academy type of thing. But I think Pluralsight is a better name because it is memorable and it means nothing. So I like things that are, and maybe it has an internal meaning, for example, in them. I don't know if it has, but for me, I like these names. And what I did is I made a list of like 20 individual words that I like. So words like flow, obviously dome, train, training, like plane, bunch of different things. And I wrote a small console app that mixed them. So makes combinations of words and it just spits them out. And then I'm like, if something sounds good and it's 2 syllables, I'll go for it. And it had to be 2 syllables because both words would have been 1 syllable each. And Dometrain was there and was one of the shortlisted ones. I really wanted something with flow, but then the guy who made WeWork made a company called Flow, and I don't want to have anything to do with it because he's an interesting character. So Dometrain was there, and I'm like, okay, can I find meaning out of this? And dome is another word. It's like top of the head. So your dome is naked, like you don't wear a hat or whatever. And then train can be like choo-choo, the vehicle train, but it's also training. So the way I interpret it is like training for your head, Dometrain. So it's not obvious, and I love that it's not obvious, and I love that it just sounds good. It sounds memorable. I got this course on Dometrain. Nothing else, and it's also, is it ubiquitous, the word? Like if you search for Dometrain, the platform is the only thing that's going to come out. Nothing else exists. So that was also very important.
Yeah, I think like 2 syllables is kind of like the magic number, really. It's kind of, I always find it fascinating hearing how people come up with names. I know this isn't 2 syllables, but my company name, Everstack, is kind of like, it's 2 words. But I went through a similar process where you just like thinking, right, I want 2 words, flick through the dictionary, come up with random things, put them together, make sure the domain's free, and then just going through that cycle for ages. And yeah, for the Everstack one, I just saw those and thought, how is that domain not taken? So I grabbed that. So I was quite pleased with that. But yeah, naming things is hard, but quite interesting how the journey people take to come up with the name.
If you try to find meaning on something and find something that has meaning already, you'll find that the .com domain is taken. And I wouldn't want to have it as .io, whatever. So Dometrain, it was basically a no-brainer for me. And once I saw that, hey, it doesn't exist and it doesn't really mean anything. So that's like the perfect name. And then I find meaning in it, which is very important. And then when someone is asking, what does it mean? It's like, that's what it means. Oh, it makes sense and it's not that obvious. The problem is some people call it Dometrain. And I know you did that as well in the beginning. It's a very small minority, but it's also a conversation starter. Why do you call it Dometrain? It's like, oh, it's not Dometrain. It's actually Dometrain because dome and okay, that makes sense.
So I guess I looked at it and it was obviously what I knew you wouldn't have called it Dometrain, but it was more like, when you very first see it and it's kind of where's the hyphenation? Where's the word separation? So, and because it's all one word and it's all lowercase because it's a domain, it's kind of like, where's the split? So as my brain automatically tries to find different splits that it could possibly be, one of them is Dometrain, because it's all together. But yeah, as we say, naming things is hard. I find it weird. We're saying about 2 syllables, and 1 syllable just doesn't work. So I just don't get this whole Twitter rebranding.
No.
Like, it just doesn't work. It's kind of like, are you on X, or I'm going to send an X? It's just, it needs to be 2 syllables a name, doesn't it?
Yeah, I messaged my ex on X. Like, what?
I hadn't thought about that one, actually.
It's so dumb. Or like, oh yeah, it's where do you watch it? Oh, on an X video. Like, what? On an X video, a video on X? I'm like, oh, that's what you mean.
Yeah,
so
I'm the current calling it Twitter, to be honest.
I'm keep calling it Twitter. I'm not gonna change that.
So we normally at the very end do dev tips, and I realised, well, 2 things. I completely forgot to come up with one, and I forgot to ask you if you come up with one. I don't know whether you have, but hands up, I completely forgot.
Well, I don't have one, but I can give you one.
Go to dometrain.com. Go to
dometrain.com right now and use discount code unhandled for 20% off any course. The first 50 of you, I'm just coming up with this on the spot. The first 50 of you can use the code. That's it. That's the tip.
Nice. So for those that have made it to this point in the episode, magic, dometrain.com.
Yeah.
Cool. So with that, a massive thank you for joining us a second time. So I'll see if I can get you on at some point for a 3rd episode.
Make another course. I'm going to be back.
Right. Kubernetes.
Kubernetes.
I just need to find time to do it. I'll start begging with my current main client saying, I can have another month off. We're actually potentially going to Australia next year for a month. So I've already had to say I need a month off next year. So can I have another month off?
Let's see.
We'll see what happens. So a massive thank you for joining me, and thank you for everyone for listening. A quick reminder that this podcast is sponsored by Everstack, which is my own company providing software development and consultation services. For more information, visit everstack.com. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please do help me spread the word on social media. I normally use the hashtag unhandledexception, and I can be found on Twitter. I'm calling it Twitter at Dracan, Dracan, and my DMs are open. And my blog, danclark.com, has links to all my social stuff too. And we will include links to all the stuff we've mentioned, especially Dometrain and the courses we've mentioned, in the show notes, which can be found on, Nick's getting excited in the background now, which can be found on unhandledexceptionpodcast.com.